Welcome back to Expediting Change. I appreciate you checking back in with us. Today, I have a very, very special guest, a gentleman that I've known for a very long time that has a plethora, a myriad, a lot, a whole bunch of knowledge to bring to the BIPOC, to bring to the culture. This conversation is going to be expansive. We're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about Black wealth. We're going to talk about Black home ownership. We're going to dig right into it. And remember, Expediting Change is not just us getting up here, having a conversation with each other, buddy, giving you some information, and then we go back and have drinks and have fun. No, Expediting Change is about giving you knowledge, inclusive of step-by-step how, 1, 2, 3, to get into it, to deep dive, so we expedite change for you. So I appreciate you continuing to tune in with Shamari. Let's go.
Open my mind and try to reach yours. Ask myself, why is it you really want to preach, boy?
So today I have my guy here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Antoine Thompson. My pleasure to meet you all. Involved in a number of good things. One is Greater Washington Region Clean Cities, also a partner in Creative PMO, and also a real estate investor, agent, and real estate strategist too. I help a lot of folks in real estate.
Let's pay homage though. Let's give you some context to your history. You know what I mean? We met way back in the town. So let's pay homage to our history together, to your history, some of the things you've done in the past.
Yeah, well, first I went to Bennett High School.
Go ahead, Bennett High.
Went from Buffalo, grew up east side of Buffalo. Actually started real early in the game, was all high, all West New York, and track and cross country, Tiger till I die. Also, we used to deliver newspapers, used to wash toilets, deliver newspapers, deliver pizzas. Then I had a lot of other good jobs as well. So I was a staffer for the city council in Buffalo. I was a city council member in Buffalo as well. And I was a New York State senator as well. And then I've run a number of organizations, from economic development organizations, and National Black Real Estate Group, National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And then I was a job czar, help with workforce development in Buffalo. And now I lead a regional organization that's tied into a national group dealing with renewable and clean energy, and also environmental justice as well. So I've been involved with a number of different things, but housing, real estate, and minority business are my, and environmental justice are my really three things I really get all excited about. So make a change.
No doubt. So that excitement, tell me how your past and how you came up, how did it come to play or come to form and make an impact for what your passion is right now?
Yeah, so for me, it's always been about trying to make things happen. So I always tell people I didn't get my first pair of Nike sneakers till I was 12.
No doubt.
And
wait, so Nike was the measurement of you got some paper, you doing it, you good?
No, my aunt. So how I got my first pair of name brand shoes was my aunt bought them for me when I was 12. So we used to wear a lot of buddies, a lot of not no name stuff. And so at that point, I said, I would get a little, my brother had a paper route, and, we had a lot of ups and downs. So, I got free lunch my whole life.
No doubt.
We had, we'll go to the park and get little lunches at the neighborhood park.
No doubt. Summer program. I work for that program, so I could get free lunch too.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I just, when I turned 12, and my mom got Section 8. My brother would go down there, and because my mom was working, and to keep the lights on, to go down to social services and all that. We were in high school, and I just said, man, I don't ever want to be in that situation.
No doubt.
And so, my father wasn't around, and so that just really drove me.
It helped shape you.
And so it did, and so, working, sports became the outlet. And then, when I was at Bennett, we didn't have a lot of supports. And so, I just said that I would, try to go to college. And I had this one counselor who was just always like trying to make sure you apply and all that other stuff. And then I just broke through and went to school. And when I got to college, you know, it was weird because I went to school with 4 guys. We were all on the track team together.
Yeah.
And Aaron Jackson, Steve Roberts, Majid Hakeem. And then we all went to high school together. We all went to Brockport together. And we all graduated together.
Nice.
That's a powerful story.
And it's a support system.
Yeah. And we all had different challenges in college. We all made it through and learned a lot from all of them. And it just made me, when I got in school, you know, I really got involved. I was still doing little sports, but it wasn't the same as in Bennett. So I got really into student leadership and wanted to make change. And so from that point on, man, I joined the fraternity, Alpha fraternity. I was president of Black Student Union.
Nice.
So I was just raising hell on campus about things.
As you should.
Became a Pan-Africanist, so I was doing, fighting for Somalia, fighting against apartheid.
Yeah.
There's a lot of racial incidents on campus.
Yep.
So I was very involved in that.
Yep.
And then, and I worked on some political campaigns, but, so Bill Clinton ran, Jesse Jackson ran, and then, and I ran, and then, I always say I learned my best experience on politics actually was in college.
No doubt.
And everything I learned was really there. I studied Shirley Chisholm when I was in college. I wrote my undergraduate paper on her and her life and how she rose in politics.
No doubt.
So by the time I got out of school and I went back to Buffalo, I just wanted to make change.
No doubt. No.
I lived briefly in Atlanta, and I went to the Million Man March in Atlanta. And I just moved there. I only been in Atlanta. I moved there in August. Went to Million Man March in October.
Yeah.
And then got this, I wind up coming back to Buffalo because I hadn't lived there since I was only 25.
Yeah.
And so I wind up coming back, and then I just said, I was on a mission to make the difference.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so I just came back to Buffalo on fire, ready to make some things happen.
Ready to shoot.
That's what I did. Yeah, and that's what I did.
So if you're listening to this, one thing that I heard, and you're a college student, what Antoine just said was he took the opportunity, I'll paraphrase, took the opportunity to learn, grow, and make mistakes while he was in college that actually helped when he got out of college. He said just now, stop me if I'm wrong, but I learned more about politics while I was in college than when I actually got into politics. So for those of you who watching my podcast that you're in college, take that opportunity. College is a learning, right? It's a microcosm of the real world. That's when you can make some mistakes. It's okay. But once you come out of there, you actually take those learnings, and now it's time to make sure that you're failing forward. So I think I want to start with the politics. Starting with the politics, we're in the DC area. We're in the DMV.
And it's at the White House last week.
Everything politics all the time here. It's funny being here. Oftentimes people will say to you, hey, instead of who are you, is where do you work?
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? It's nice to meet you. Where do you work? So talk about politics from a BIPOC, from the culture's perspective, being in the DMV.
It's really interesting. African Americans in the DC area are in a very unique position. It's weird because, coming out of New York, which is the next epicenter of politics. Politics in America on the Democratic side are really driven by New York, California, Illinois, Atlanta to a lesser degree, and in the DC area because so much happens on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
But in the DMV, it's interesting because if you're in politics in the DMV, it's a lot different than other places, right? You have access to the Capitol.
Yeah.
A lot of staffers work in the Capitol. A lot of Black people work in federal agencies, so they can influence there. And then DC, Prince George's County, Montgomery County to some degree, Northern Virginia to a little degree. African Americans are very engaged and very relevant in the process.
No doubt.
And And from the political standpoint, African Americans are used to not only contributing, being very involved, and have the ability to make some things happen.
Yep.
And so, I love that fact about the DMV, and unfortunately, that's not really true in a lot of places. Although African Americans might be an attorney general or lieutenant governor, they might be a mayor in certain areas, their ability to really have the type of systemic and substantive change that you see in this area is just not really prevalent in a lot of places. So when you look at, Supreme Court, state Supreme Court judges, or you look at county court judges, the sheriffs, blacks building hotels, blacks owning banks, blacks being real estate developers, blacks working on construction jobs. A lot of that you just take for granted when you live in the DMV. Going into restaurants, where you go to Morton's in downtown DC, it's all black. And it's all black people in there dropping $200 a night. And it's like 80% black. And so that's the political economy.
So speak
so
to that.
That's the political economy where you can affect, and people don't even really question it, whether they're black, white, or otherwise, because that has become the social norm.
Absolutely.
Right.
And a bubble. Would you say that's a bubble?
It is a bubble. It is a beltway bubble. And so, the ability, and it doesn't mean that there still aren't challenges. Because even with that, from the housing and some other things and lending, while African Americans have made progress, there's still some limitations, right? African Americans still, when you talk about politics in this region, we still don't contribute enough. We still are dependent on white developers to help bankroll black campaigns, even in black markets. That's not to say black people don't give, but you still have most of your PACs, political action committees that have money in the region are still, the bigger ones are still largely white funded. And so, who the person that funds the campaign controls what happens when the person's elected.
That's right.
So we still got, even in this market, you still have a ways to go.
Which is crazy, right? So what I want to hear you speak to is, you mentioned Beltway, Prince George's County. So Prince George's County, period, statistically, proven, it's out there. Google it, encyclopedia, whatever you want to do, is the #1 affluent place in America for black people. But on the other side of that, you just said that the contributions from the culture aren't up enough. Talk to me about that. That just doesn't sit right, nor does it seem to make 100% sense.
And I don't want to say that black people don't give.
No doubt.
But the fact of the matter is, when you look at even some of the unions, who controls the unions, there may be some blacks as business agents, et cetera, that might be on some of the PACs and stuff like that. But it's still, too much, still not, and for that currency that fuels politics, two things fuel politics is votes and money. Those are two things that fuel politics.
No doubt.
Votes and money.
No doubt.
Who's controlling each, and money, unfortunately, influences the politics.
No doubt.
So when, African Americans do, I think, give at a higher rate, but then still, when you start looking at who's dropping the $5,000 checks, the $10,000 checks, who's bankrolling some of the independent expenditures, these are separate committees that run, who's putting $1 million in the committee and all that. Those are still largely white folks.
No doubt.
And so we have to continue to influence that process. And that's what, fortunately here, because there are a lot of black millionaires, there are a lot of African Americans that are making over $100,000, $200,000 households. You're able to get more $500s to $1,000, $2,000 donors, whereas in places like Buffalo or Detroit, or say, maybe Rochester or St. Louis or Minneapolis, you get a $50 or $150 donation on an average from a black person. That limits your ability to control you know, when decisions got to get made, right? And so, you know, sometimes people say, why did this happen? Why did that strange thing happen, right? Fortunately, in this area, because you have, you know, you've had people like Marion Barry, who was the mayor here. You know, he held stuff up. He made sure that you created a class of people that were successful. And even in Prince George's County, you still have some limitations. There's been some successes of some blacks making some moves, but still not enough. I mean, you know, the numbers is what matter. So when you look at report cards on how many blacks get contracts from the government, how many blacks get their projects funded, it's better here, but it's not where it needs to be given our demographics. And so I would say to you all, we got to continue to affect change. And so
give me the how. How? What? So if I'm listening to this podcast, what should I do today or tomorrow? What should I write down and do?
So a couple of things I would say, and that's a great point. So number one is you got to be in the game. It's either you are involved in politics. Either you do politics, politics don't do you.
Okay.
Right?
Either you do politics or politics are gonna do you.
It's gonna happen. Your license, your life, everything is impacted by politics.
No doubt.
So you need to have at least one or two elected officials that you got a relationship with. That, you know, something going down in your neighborhood, your community, or something happen on TV, you can call up on the phone and say, what the hell was that about?
No doubt.
You know?
No doubt.
So, and part of that, you got to have not just a voting relationship, but a financial relationship.
No doubt.
I don't care if you just say, you know, every year I'm giving so-and-so $250. So I register on their report, you know, that they know
that you're there.
That I'm there.
That you're there.
You know, because they staff look and say, oh, you know, Antoine Thompson gave you $250 a year over 10 years. That's $2,500.
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
That sounds different, right?
No doubt.
You say I gave you over 10 years, this man, they do a paper, one of his most consistent donors is Antoine Thompson. He gave $2,500 over 10 years. Or if that's $1,000, he gave $10,000 when they were on the story.
That's right.
That's a different conversation.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
He gave $25, dollars over the last 10 years. Right?
Or one time.
Or one time.
Or one time.
So you want to be on the paper. You want to be recorded. So when you call that office, your phone conversation is different. You know, I'm a voter, I'm a homeowner, and I donate.
No doubt.
It's a different conversation. The other thing I would say is, you know, find the issues that you care about and be involved in making things happen. You know, things in America happen because someone is pushing it. So if you're concerned about police violence, which people often are, I know I'm always about it. I don't complain loudly unless I'm doing something about it.
No doubt.
Right. So if I'm not going down to the hearing, or I'm not, sending an email or tweeting to the mayor or the county executive or the council member or member of Congress about crime, then I'm part of the problem.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to talk about it. But the issues, like, I'm concerned about homeownership. So you will see me on Twitter. You will see me on Instagram. You will see me in the newspaper, on magazines, on blogs, tweeting, talking, emailing about trying to get Black people mortgages, trying to get Black people this, that, and anything in the real estate space. And so your mouth and action have to align.
No doubt.
Right? So you can't just be on the side. And that side conversation, the barbershop news line, is important.
No doubt.
But it's gotta go beyond that.
It's not enough.
That's not enough.
It's not enough.
So I would say that. The other thing I would say is, develop your little network. Right? Because it doesn't matter, even if you have, like, this podcast, say you have your own blog. Invite different policymakers or elected officials or other influential people on to, hey, you know what? This is my show was straight from the streets. And I want to interview you. And I want to talk to you about this. If you do it, you ask them enough and you follow up, they will come.
No doubt.
So you actually have a lot more power.
No doubt.
Than you realize. So those would be two things I would strongly suggest. One is make sure you contribute, that you vote, that you donate. You identify two. You say, you know what? These two people directly affect my life. Because I want you to remember this. The people that affect your life the most are the elected officials that are closest to you.
That's right.
Right? So
say such as county legislature.
Yeah.
Say such as.
So such as a council person,
Yep.
right? You know, they're in City Hall. You're going to get to City Hall faster than you're going to get to the White House.
That's right.
Even if you live in the DMV,
That's right.
You're going to get to Prince George's County, or you're going to get to DC. You're going to get to, you know, to the City Hall in DC faster than you're going to get to the White House, because you can't even get in the White House.
Right.
You know, you got to go through A, B, and C. So your ability to affect change is different. Then, you know, you start looking at your state, your county, state, and federal people as well. They all play a role, but the ones who are closest to you have the most impact. That's your trash getting picked up.
Yep.
That's the street lights being fixed.
Yep.
That's the sidewalk being done.
Yep.
That's the vacant house that's on your street.
Yep.
That's making sure that even with the, you know, when we're talking about mortgages and lenders, your government puts money in banks.
Yep.
The same way your county and state does. So they all can have an impact on that, and you can impact them because you can touch them.
No doubt.
You can touch them easily.
That's like the.
Is that right?
No doubt. It actually sounded good. It was a good backdrop. It sounded good.
Rain made me go to sleep.
They said it was raining. We need some rain. I was looking at one of my neighbor's fences today, and it's like it had pollen all over it. That white fence.
Man.
How's that one by itself sound? Like you said in the ambiance.
No, it will not sound good.
Sound like static in the mic.
Yep. Especially when I EQ, it'll bring that type of noise stands out more when you start cleaning up.
No doubt, no doubt. We'll pick up right from there.
You guys can pick it right back up.
Okay. So I think you make a really good point with those that you can touch. I'm a big proponent when I say, people misunderstand when I say marching in the streets is one thing. It's not that I disagree with it, but I push back on, well, what else are you doing? Right? So if we come back, and I'm not saying, because it should be a multi-pronged strategy, right? So we marching in the streets, that's cool. But I really like you saying, touch those local folks. Touch those local folks. Now, my question though is, when's the best time? Because I would assume the best time to touch those local folks is when they're running.
No, actually, it's constant.
Okay.
Right? It's constant. So let me just talk about activism.
Okay.
There's activism and there's advocacy, and they're not one and the same.
No doubt.
So, but they both are important. And so you need feet in the street so the people that's in the seats listen.
Yep.
Right? Because if you just go into the meeting, you just sending the emails and all that, and you going to, doing the technocrat stuff, you writing the letters, you helping negotiate legislation. All that's important.
Yep.
All that's important. But you still got to have a rally. You still got to have a petition.
Yep.
You still got to be in a newspaper saying, a council member or congressional member or the mayor or the governor or the president, they need to do this. All those things are part of affecting change.
Absolutely.
So it's not an either or. And it's just as important as you got to be the one writing the checks so that your candidate gets in, your candidate stays in, and then your candidate is responsive to you as well. And that same is true as the person who is the one that, is helping to run that campaign, the person that's running the person against the person that's in there so that they do right, right? So all that works together to make the change that you want. And so that's why you got to be involved. So the other thing I was going to say to your point is, yes, you need the people that can affect when they are in office. So, a lot of times what happens to African Americans, we do our part. Mm-hmm. We go vote.
Yeah.
And then we do what you just said.
Yeah.
I catch them in 3 years.
Yeah.
But shit, a lot happens in 3 years.
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
And so they voted in 4 years, they vote on 4 budgets.
Yeah.
Right? If you talk about crime, say if your community, 100 people die, get murdered a year, that's 400 people that are murdered
No doubt.
in 4 years, right? If say 500 people lose their house a year, 4 years, that's what, 2,000 people and lost their homes. So
Actively engaged.
yeah, so you have to be actively engaged, because what happens in politics is, say you council member James, right?
Never.
Right? But I'm just saying,
Never.
hypothetically,
Ever.
you council member James. And I may not have supported you, right? But the people that want government to work, they don't support people half the time. But once you in there, they got to do business with you anyway.
No doubt.
Because there may be 9 people on the Prince George's County Council or 9 people on the Buffalo Common Council, right? And you got to vote.
Yeah.
So you may chair the legislation committee, you may sit on the finance committee, whatever, and they need 5 votes to win, and whether or not they supported you or not, you won in the 5 votes, because the guy you supported may not support you on that issue.
No doubt.
Right? And so they got to do business with you anyway.
Playing politics.
And so
politics.
So it's important for you to always be involved and always watching. Like I live in Prince George's County, so I get the emails every week, multiple times a week. I'm on the listserv.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you can just sign up and just read. You ain't got to be on every meeting.
Right.
You ain't got to be on every meeting. But you know what? Know what's going on. You can subscribe and get their updates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And what you will find is that there's a lot of shit happening, a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah.
And you don't want to just be reading about it.
Absolutely.
So every now and again, you want to step up and say, hey, man, you shouldn't vote for that.
No doubt.
And that way, so they know that there's a concerned person
Absolutely.
that cares about those issues. So I always say that don't just check in every 4 years.
No doubt.
Especially like if I donate to you, I don't care if I give you $100 or more.
You're coming back.
I'm reaching out to you.
I'm pulling up. Pulling up.
And I donate. I'm not rich, but I donate to a lot of folks. There's a lot of folks that helped me over the years.
Yep.
And so I believe in the process.
Yep.
I respect the process. Joe Biden ran. I raised about $20,000 for him. I donated personally, I think around $5,000 to his campaign. So, I believe in the process.
No doubt.
And I stay on them. I was in the White House at a meeting last week.
No doubt.
And got some former staff members of mine that worked there, and I went, encourage them and stuff like that.
Yep.
But you gotta be in the game.
No doubt. I wanna go back, because I think you made a very good point, and I know you explained it, but I just want to make it 100% lucid for folks listening, which I thought was great. You said there's a difference between activism and advocacy. So let's do this. Tell me an example of what activism is, and then tell me an example of what advocacy is.
Yeah, they both are really important. So a lot of times you think of like Reverend Sharpton is an activist, right? You think of my good friend Tamika Mallory, they doing activism when there's police brutality, right?
Yeah.
Right. But and they're in the street. They're organizing parents.
Yeah.
They're organizing people who's been affected by police brutality, et cetera. Right. But then they're getting people organized. They're highlighting the issue. They're bringing attention to something that is affecting and effecting people, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So then you got to have somebody that's what we call bringing the fire,
That's
right?
Yep.
Right. But then you got to have that advocacy that impacts public policy.
Absolutely.
Right. Right. Because the advocacy, what I say, brings the attention, and then the advocacy brings the action
Absolutely.
that leads to change in legislation
Absolutely.
or the courts,
Absolutely.
right? So if you don't have advocacy activism in the street, the judges do what the hell they want to do,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Right? But when you have the advocacy, then you're able to affect the laws, right? So then they say, hey, you know what? You gotta have 10 years, you gotta have practiced law 5 years to be a judge in these big cities. But in these small towns, you don't even gotta be a lawyer. Did you know that?
Yeah.
You don't even gotta be a lawyer.
Yeah.
In these small towns where black people get arrested, you know, you don't even gotta be a lawyer. Right? So the other thing is the advocacy deals with, okay, how we gonna fund the police? How we gonna set the criteria for a district attorney? The advocacy deals with how much money is gonna go for affordable housing. The advocacy goes to how much is gonna go for minority businesses. The advocacy says, all right, street lights, school graduation rates, how the budget's gonna get allocated, where community center is going to go, how much funding is going to go for. That advocacy then becomes the dread of that issue.
Absolutely.
So the activism is saying, hey, we don't have any community centers in our area.
That's right.
Right? Our kids getting shot, right? You know, our kids are on the street corners, right? We need to rally, we need to agitate, we need to bring some attention to it. Then you got to have some people going to say, listen, we got 5 black people down here on the city council in D.C. We got 3. We got a council president in Buffalo. We got a black mayor in Buffalo. Yet the poverty rate is, you know, it's almost 40%. Almost 4 out of 10 people live in poverty.
No doubt.
What y'all doing about it?
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
So someone's got to then say, we got to come up with some issue agendas. So the advocacy folks, the activism says, these are issues we care about. Then the advocacy side is how are we going to affect public policy to make some change? How are we going to get the corporations to check in, right?
Absolutely.
So the activists go protest or outside those corporations, right? Right? Then the advocates then say, all right, we need to go to these corporate board of directors and say they need to be putting more money in the black neighborhood for A, B, C, D, and E.
Absolutely.
So both of them
work hand in hand.
Work hand in hand. It's the same thing what happened with Dr. King. The same thing happens with Reverend Sharpton, right? Sometimes Reverend Sharpton is at the White House, and sometimes he's on 125th Street in Harlem.
No doubt.
Raising Cane.
No doubt.
You know, sometimes he's in with the families outside trying to bring attention to it. And then sometimes he's going to do the advocacy part where he's got to go testify on Capitol Hill and say, yeah, I need to do something on, you know, police brutality, on voting rights. So they both go hand in hand. And rest assured, if it was just doing advocacy way, nothing would happen in America.
No doubt. No doubt. And I'm a...
Because think about it.
Yeah.
If it was not for George Floyd being murdered in the riots that happened, the little bit of change that did happen would not have happened.
Possibly not.
I mean, you had a whole Juneteenth holiday that was created, you know, because George Floyd. I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
George Floyd, there would never be a national Juneteenth holiday if it was not activism in the streets. Because there was no advocacy for there had been advocacy for Juneteenth to be a national holiday for like 50 years.
No doubt.
Right?
No
People
doubt.
had been going to the White House, going on Capitol Hill, trying to make it a law.
It's on the ticket forever.
Forever. But because of the activism in the streets, that joint became, people like, well, we didn't even ask for this. Well, people have been asking for that. It's just that it was so far now on the thing. It's like DC statehood. It's just like reparations. So it was that red hot activism in the street. White people said, we got to do something. That's how the fair housing law got passed, because Dr. King got assassinated. America was on fire, and they did something. Same thing when Rodney King died. You know, he didn't die, but Rodney King got beat up in the 1990s. It was 91 or 93, one or two. And I think it was 91. He got beat really bad. It was a black guy, for some of you young folks who don't know. He was in LA. It was a high-profile case. They had a camcorder. Yeah, probably don't remember camcorder.
VHS.
It was a video camera.
VHS.
And they had a video camera, and they caught the police, LA police, beating the man up, and
The riots.
riots happen, and some
nuts.
things happen. So that's why I always say the activism and the advocacy go hand in hand.
I love it. So what I'm gonna do is, you done signed away all your rights by doing my podcast. I'm gonna replay that over and over and over because when I'm having my debates with individuals and folks get, we'll say, in heightened discussions, that's a very lucid way to explain it because I think that there is opportunity for improvement drawing that complete circle or the yin and the yang from, yes, we got the activism, we gonna pop off. But are we doing what we need to do from the advocacy side before George Floyd gets murdered?
That's the problem because, and I want to break this down, and I love to come back because this, you actually raised a good point. We do a lot of activism. But we are weak on the advocacy part. So if you go to Capitol Hill, there are very few Black people working there, but very few are in those offices on a daily basis.
No doubt.
You go to your state capitals where the real policies impact in America, because we are a state-driven society. Y'all think about Washington, but the fact is, the way our government is set, most powers rest in governors. And then they rest in the county executive and the mayors. But more is in governors' hands. And so very few Black folks. I mean, I was a state legislator, open 40 hours a week or more. Very few Black organizations came in my office. And that only gets worse as you go to the nation's capital. So, going to see an elected official once a year is ineffective. There's 52 weeks in a year. There's 168 hours in a week. And their offices are open anywhere from 40 to 60 hours during the day. And so if you're not in their offices, talking to them, organizing with them, bringing them suggestions, not just bringing them a problem, but bringing them a solution.
Absolutely.
All right? Because they get problems all day, every day. They get them emailed to them.
Absolutely.
There are other lobbyists and other advocacy groups are bringing them there. So that's one of our two biggest deficiencies. We don't donate enough and we don't advocate enough. We are speaking up at meetings when we do go, but I would say we've got to do a lot more of that. And I don't think as a community we invest enough in advocacy. And I've seen it. I ran a national Black organization, and I can tell you firsthand, when I came in and since I left, it's been very, very mild. And because the advocacy, the activism may be, a one-day event. And you get a little news story, but the elected officials going back to the office.
Absolutely.
Right? Business and government's going to keep working.
Absolutely.
Right? The court's going to stay open. Police going to keep arresting people. So in order to change that
system.
I mean, think about all these kids that have been murdered in at schools, supermarkets, et cetera, and we still haven't changed gun rights, right? So all these other things that either directly or indirectly impact Black people, you got to constantly be in the face of people.
I agree.
You got to constantly be in the face of people.
Agree.
And how you do that, we need to invest more on the activism is important, but that advocacy part is so important.
So how do
it's 55-45.
So how do we advocate for what we clearly see, no matter where you go in this country to a downtown and see gentrification taking place, whether you are in what used to be Chocolate City. I was in Baltimore, downtown Baltimore. They're calling it the Northern Harbor now. Whether I'm in Buffalo, you're looking at the Skyway, and gentrification is taking over around this country. How and what does it look like from an advocacy perspective for us to either push against the narrative, push against the grain, get involved? Because I don't fundamentally believe that gentrification itself is completely tied to systematic racism and oppression. Because I see where there are some states, where there are some cities, where the downtown areas, you got a lot of Black people, but it's Black people that have high net value, that have high dollars. So what does advocacy look like as this gentrification and this landscape is changing in housing and development very drastically across this country?
So let me just say this. I think you need both. You need in that space, you need activism and you need advocacy. And I'm going to tell you why. The activism makes it uncomfortable for the blacks that have positions that cut deals and the whites that claim that they care, that represent black people as well.
Doubt.
You need those activists that are breaking the chairs, that are, walking around with the signs, that are agitating and bringing attention to the issues. Then on the advocacy side, you also need folks who are making sure that when you look at how much, say, a city or county or state provided tax credits or small business loans, how many of them went to black entrepreneurs or black developers? If they did housing, how many of those projects were developed or managed by black individuals, right? And really look at the data on that, because people will say, "Oh yeah, we built affordable housing," and that's a big hustle, right? Because a lot of times they can say that's affordable housing, and they did 200 units, but only 10 of those units or 20 of those units may really be affordable, and that affordable might be $1,900.
I was about to say, who decides what affordable is?
They have numbers, so that affordable, $1,900 compared to $35,000 and $5,000,
right?
And there's 200 units. They do, and only 20 of them go to so-called low to moderate income people, and so that's a big hustle right now, right? So they do these tax credit programs, and they have formulas, and less than 15% of them have to go to low to moderate income people.
Yeah.
So that's part of displacement. So you've got to have elected officials who are being held accountable, and you got to have advocacy groups that are doing more to address those. We can't allow so much of our energy to get sucked up into some of the non-economic justice issues.
Okay.
Right. So what happens is when you talk about economic justice, which Dr. King was talking about when he died, that issue just does not get the attention that it deserves from our people.
No doubt.
We are overly slanted in the social justice space.
No doubt.
And that's for a variety of reasons, but the economic justice stuff represents that, and environmental justice stuff represents so much of why our people are suffering.
Cause and effect.
Yes.
Cause and effect.
And so how do you deal with that? You got to follow the money. You got to follow the money, and you got to demand change, right? Like I was reading an article in the Buffalo News today, and I don't even mean to quote them, but in the free press. But let me just say, I was reading this article today, and I was just so disgusted. I was so disgusted. Because this is what happens with gentrification. I'm going to break down gentrification for y'all in a real simplistic way. Say, for example, this article. They said in the city of Buffalo, New York, where we're from, they were saying, all this money is going to the east side of Buffalo. $135, $165 million, right?
Yeah.
And everybody needs to be excited about it. But you have to put into context that over the last 10 years, they put over $10 billion everywhere else.
Everywhere else.
So 165 million compared to 10 billion.
Absolutely. It's a crumb.
That's a crumb. You can't control. If I put $10 billion in a 50 block area, right? And then I put 165 million in a 200 block area.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Are you going to really see the difference?
Sure.
And the area where you put in 165, they have high rates of teenage pregnancy, high rates of people living with lead in the house, high rates of unemployment, low education rates, low food deserts, bank deserts, you name it.
Yep.
As they say, Black people are on the top of every worst list.
Yeah.
Right? And you're saying 165 compared to 5 billion.
Yeah.
And is that progress? It's damn sure ain't equity.
Definitely not equity. And then that's not even diving into the details of what those dollars are going to be associated to.
Yeah,
who's going to get them.
And who's going to get them, what type of projects they're going to go in, et cetera. So we know, and so when you talk about how gentrification happens, so in DC, for example, I just read an article, go to Washington Informer, or you can just Google the article that I just did on Black homeownership, on mortgage lending disparities in DC. What I show is that African Americans are denied mortgages at twice the rate of whites. All right. And even in Prince George's County right now, that's happening at about 1.5 times. Black people are denied mortgages at about 1.5 times the rate of whites. So whites are moving into Prince George's County at a steady rate, right? And so how the gentrification thing happens is, y'all think, well, they just moving in. They just ain't moving in. It's that the lenders and developers are all
supporting the transition, funding the transition.
And the government is. So the government, and this is what happened. I saw this happen when I was on the city council in Buffalo. And I used to be so angry about it. But then I was the guy who was, I'm too economic justice minded. See, when you social minded, everybody like you. Because you just, you're concerned about
you for
make
the
sure
people.
Make sure the police don't beat the people up. Okay, we ain't doing that. Well, why are you worried about making sure that you should just be happy? I'll never forget this conversation. I'll never ever get this conversation from a counselor before who's not a color. She said, you should just be happy, and your people are just happy that a community center is being built and a library is being built.
That's why I'm not a politician, because I would have been arrested at that point.
And I said, no, we want to help design the library. We want to work on the library.
Absolutely.
We want to make sure that we are the workers at that library, et cetera. We don't just want a library in the community. We want to be a part of every step of that process. And so what happens is, folks, when we talk about gentrification, it goes back to what I said a few minutes ago. It's the lending disparities so you can buy a house. It's the lack of the grandma, the auntie, the mother, the father, when they need to get their house fixed up that they live in, they can't get a home equity loan if they do own the house, or if they get if there's government money to fix up your house. In most of these cities around America, if your grandmother or somebody owns a house, it takes anywhere from 1 to 2 years for them to get grant money to fix up the house. Yeah. And then they're dragged in the housing court. Absolutely. And they're pushed out of the house.
Absolutely.
And so it's a system that subtly and intentionally pushes us out.
Absolutely.
And then we wonder why. So then you say, how can a city like DC, how can that happen there? How can it happen in this other place? Well, I just showed you in Buffalo, they put the public figures say over $10 billion invested in that community over the last 10 years. Yep. And they just told you in the newspaper, less than 200 million of that 2 billion went to the areas most served, right? Most underserved.
And it's public knowledge.
Public
info.
So people follow the money, right? So so that's what pushes people out. So if you look at the fact, if you want to make a community equitable, then you just say, hey, okay, we got $100 million. Okay, everybody gets whatever, it's 9 council districts, you divide it by 9. Okay, maybe everyone will get the same amount, but they get a similar amount.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
All right. But when you have these vast disparities, that's what helps contribute to that. And if you put that with business lending, you put that with mortgage lending, those are the 2 biggest things. And then you add with that the government. Where is the government going to mark the crosswalks?
Yep.
Where's the government going to put new street lights in?
Yeah.
Where's the government going to invest on water lines, sewer lines?
Infrastructure.
Where all infrastructure is one of the biggest indicators where the government is going.
Absolutely. And how often, in your experience, or not how often, how far ahead is city government, state government, et cetera, already planning this out?
You know, and that's a great question. And that's why you can't just allow people to get elected and then you only talk to them once in 4 years. Because oftentimes these plans are like 10 or 20, 30 years out. And we think everything is changing. And so I want to get you out of these 2 nuggets. And I hope that people get this. So two things that African Americans need to do, right? So transportation planning, I was on a call about this a couple of weeks ago. So transportation planning, these are the people who work for your state Department of Transportation and your public works departments, right? These are the ones that's planning the highways, roads, all that. Then you have your planners. These are the ones that's planning for the future of your neighborhood. What your neighborhood's gonna look like 10, 20 years from now, right? Those 2 areas impact how the police is gonna go.
Absolutely.
Because that's where the money gonna flow.
Absolutely.
Right? And those areas lack diversity.
Mm-hmm.
They lack diversity.
Mm-hmm.
They really lack diversity. And so you've gotta look at getting involved. We don't have enough black engineers. We definitely don't have enough black architects. We don't have enough blacks in the planning area that's planning for our communities, because those are the ones going to say, you know, it's interesting because from being in politics, you hear these things like, well, the new buzzword is market rate.
Yeah.
Right? Versus afford. When you hear affordability, what do you think of?
I'm fin ed, so I think of a lot of different things.
So affordability, when you think about housing, they think people of color. When you think market rate, they think of middle to upper income or white. Mm-hmm. And so these are the languages that are going. Mm-hmm. And then when they talk about putting good money after bad, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So when we say we put good money after bad, we don't want to put that in those low income or communities of color. Or on the flip side, people will use language like, well, we need to invest now so that we can begin to attract a different constituent or mm-hmm. different consumer base.
Starbucks, and who Starbucks brings. So
that language says, we need to invest money now. We know we're not going to get a return because we're in this for the long haul.
Absolutely.
Because we want to make sure, we want to create a space or a place that's going to attract new investment, new stakeholders. Yep. And so this is the type of language that is used to say who we want to invest in and who we don't want to invest in.
Absolutely.
And that happens every day in politics. And unfortunately, you have people that sit at the table that want to go along and get along.
Yep.
And knowing that it's not right, because actually that's going to displace your folks. Yep. And that's why community activists get so angry, because they say, you know what? You couldn't mark the crosswalk when enough black people lived here.
Right.
Because to me, they have a thing called environmental design. Mm-hmm. That's saying like, okay, all right, you take that, people don't understand, you take that crosswalk for granted.
Yep.
But others who like bike lanes, and not all people that ride bikes are white, but that's in many low-income neighborhoods, that's symbolic.
Absolutely.
That's symbolic.
Absolutely.
Because the bike lane gets painted every year because they don't want anybody to hit the biker. But the young lady, there's people in D.C. that had to paint the crosswalk because the city wouldn't come out and paint it.
Right. It's also, not only is it symbolic, it's also a safety. Right? Because people are paying attention to the
And I want everybody everyone that's watching this, I want you to think about that, because that's how you affect community change. It's like the stop sign that in your black neighborhood that can have paint on it that only is either missing or it's got T-O-P as opposed to S-T-O-P on it. It's symbolic, but it's the reason why I make these examples of people, because you'll always remember, you know, that's how you know that your neighborhood is not a priority. And that's how you got to hold your elected officials accountable. Because you know what? When you're in a diverse neighborhood, that stuff is unacceptable. And they will get changed because they're going to call 311. Just like senior citizens will do when I was elected. They will take that time. They will call and they'll be active. And then they'll come downtown and they'll speak at a hearing. And so that's how you get involved and stay involved. But I want you, that issue on gentrification, please don't forget, follow the money. The money will always lead you to what's really going down.
Absolutely. I say it all the time. You can ask a company, a person, organization or something what they're doing, and they can tell you one thing, but you follow where they're putting their dollars.
That's right. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And that's the biggest thing I think right now. People, you know, here, I was talking to a guy from Howard University the other day.
KHU.
And they were, one of your guys.
I don't know. Every guy at HU ain't my guy, but
no, one guy. I remember a guy from you, and can't remember his name, but I'll send his name to you. And they had bought a building in DC, and I was like, wow, that's good. A nice, popular black restaurant called Half Spoke. You know, DC, check it out. Support black restaurants.
No doubt.
And he said they bought that building, and I was like, wow, that's good.
Yeah.
And I always say, as a real estate guy, you want to fight gentrification, buy the damn land. If you don't own the land, you can't control what happens on the land.
That's right.
And so the government can help influence it by zoning laws.
Absolutely.
Right? And by taxes.
Yep.
They can influence it. Those are two biggest ways that they can influence it. Then they can provide all different type of incentives in terms of loans and grants and stuff like that. But the key is land ownership. When you own the land, you can control what happens on the land.
Absolutely.
That's why we always push for ownership, whether it's residential property or it's commercial property. You got to own that stuff.
Don't sell grandma's house.
You've been doing that a long time, right?
I have. I believe I want to buy the entire Tony's Ranch House, Maine and Dewey right there, buy every single one of those lots. But I'm about to put you on the hot seat now. So this was a great conversation. But tell me what you are doing right now to expedite change.
Yeah, a couple things right now I'm doing. So one of the two big things I'm doing to expedite change. So one of the first immediate things is focus on helping African Americans and other underserved groups access this multi-billion-dollar industry called electrification. That's the electrification of vehicles in America. Helping folks get public and private sector contracts in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and across the country. I say that this electrification of vehicles is going to be just like the cell phone was in the late 90s. For young folks who may not know this, from approximately 1995 through 2001, 2, we went from people using cell phones all over and home phones.
Yeah.
And we went right to the smart mobile phones, then the smartphones.
Yeah.
So first we went to mobile phones, and then we went to smartphones.
Yeah.
And now you have very few people owning both. So when cell phones really first got started, in mass in terms of consumers using them, you had a lot of African Americans opening cell phone shops. You remember that?
Yeah.
First, we were owning these things. They used to have these little buttons called pagers.
Yeah.
Y'all young people don't know about that. You know, we had pagers. And then a lot of black people own paging shops.
Yeah.
And then we went to open the cell phone shops.
Yeah.
Right. And then we got priced out of that. And then some other groups picked up, and there's still some people of color that own them as well. So I would say right now, the big thing is to try to help African Americans. What we're doing is helping African Americans and other people of color and women as well get into grow in this space. There are a lot of people of color in the space that need to be more. Less than 90% of the folks in the country own electric vehicles.
Yeah.
The technology is still emerging.
Yep.
So we're doing a lot in that space to open doors for people.
Nice.
And so that's really important. The other thing is that's really in the home ownership space. It's really not only helping African Americans become homeowners. I've been in real estate 11 years this year, praise the Lord.
Nice.
But also effective policy.
Yeah.
So I do a lot around the country on policy for home ownership. To your point that you mentioned earlier, those issues around closing the racial wealth gap, it will only happen two ways, right? You got to own some property.
Yeah.
And you got to own some business.
Nice.
People that own property have a higher business ownership rate. Because as Roland Martin would say, no home, no loan, right?
No doubt.
And so, yes, some people are able to put together their credit cards and all that, maybe get some angel investors. But Black people, by and large, we don't get venture capital money.
Right.
And we don't get bank loans.
Yep.
So we've got our house becomes the greatest way that we can get a line of credit or something like that to help us go into business. And so that's why I fight every day. I'm talking to people, I'm counseling people. I sit on a number of housing boards. I'm addressing the housing policy stuff and really pushing every chance I get to tell people, buy something. I don't care if it's a vacant lot. And it doesn't have to be where you live. You could buy property in a different state.
Absolutely.
There's sites like auction.com.
Yep.
You can buy land just about anywhere and do that and build that equity.
Absolutely.
And build your network. So those are the two biggest things that I think about every day. I do a lot of other things, but I like to help people make money.
Nice.
Whether through owning a house, getting a business contract, getting some of that capital that's out there, and being a connector too.
No doubt.
So advocacy is what I do, and connecting people to opportunities. Those are two biggest things I love.
No doubt. You got to do what you love.
Yeah, and I love being able to do that.
My guy.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank my guy for coming on to Expediting Change. So my guest, Mr. Antoine Thompson, laid it down. And he definitely laid something down that I have been struggling to make lucid for a very long time. But he did a phenomenal job because I struggle with what comes first, the chicken or the egg, when you start talking about activism, and I'm not going to say verse, but activism and advocacy. But make sure you play this back, because it's good. It's absolutely amazing and dope and necessary for us to pull up and to be in these streets and make noise. But if we make noise and we in these streets without having any advocacy that follows up for the activism, we're just running ourselves ragged. We're just getting tired, and our message is falling on deaf ears. So I think out of all the phenomenal points that he made, I want to underscore in my outtake today about activism and advocacy. You have to be in the game. A mentor of mine told me you can't get wet watching other people swim. You heard Antoine say, you got to get in the game. You spending the money anyway, take some of that money that you're using to pay yourself first and give a donation. And once you give that donation, now you have the right, you have the opportunity, and it is on you to make sure you follow up with your local politicians, because as you heard him say, those are the people that you touch first. And then if they're not listening to you loudly enough, then that's where that activism comes in. And once they start listening because you're pounding the pavement and you pulling up, is now when you give them your 3-point agenda from that advocacy perspective. It's time for the culture to make sure that we not only advocate for ourselves, but we also have the activism that's tied to it to get what we want. We appreciate you. I appreciate you. This has been Expediting Change. Thanks for following.
It's just me. As I open my mind and try to reach yours, ask myself, why is it you really want to preach, boy? I want to teach more.